live stream you missed, or you're just catching up on a workshop, you're exactly where you should be. These sessions are packed with real, actionable strategies for building a business that actually works, without the fluff, the burnout, or the overpriced consultants. We built the eBCBA Odyssey to give entrepreneur BCBAs, what we call eBCBAs, the tools, structure, and support to grow ABA companies that serve families and protect the people doing the work. If you haven't already, take advantage of our free eBCBA Blueprint Foundation course. You'll build your mission, your financial hypothesis, and your strategic objective, the core of your company. Welcome, everyone. Thank you, Aparna. This is our second time, right?
The second time.
She had so much fun her first time. She had to come back for more. Thank you, Aparna, for coming in and talking to us second time. Take it away.
Thank you, Derek. It's my pleasure. Good evening, everyone. Some might know me. If not, here's my little introduction. I'm Aparna Suresh, a certified billing professional, passionate about simplifying revenue cycle management and ABA services. It's really great to be here today to discuss ABA documentation, unlocking the financial and compliance success and RCM perspective, and share insights to help safeguard your practice's financial health and the operational efficiency. With over 2 decades of experience in healthcare, I've worked with some of the leading organizations like HCA, Babylon, DXC. Today, I lead ASP, a company which is dedicated in empowering ABA providers with tailored solutions to enhance sustainability, efficiency, and patient outcomes. At ASP, we collaborate with some of the top 10 national autism providers. We work across 40 different states and with some of their EMRs as their billing partners. We ensure that our solutions remain cutting edge and, at the highest relevant to the industry. I've also contributed in the book, which is given there, The Essential First Step. It's one of the first of the 9 series book that talks about standardization of session notes, where we have mentioned standardization of billing practices in this book. And this just reflects our ongoing mission to simplify complex billing processes and elevate the healthcare operations. So what can you expect today? In this session, we are going to explore the critical role of ABA documentation in financial success and compliance, the common pitfalls that would lead to denials, delay, clawbacks, or revenue losses. And what are the best practices that you can use in order to optimize the documentation and to boost your reimbursement? And finally, how you can use technology and automation to reduce the errors and to improve the efficiency. Before we dive into the entire presentation, I want to clarify, I am not a clinician, but a certified billing professional from AAPC with deep expertise in revenue cycle management for ABA services. While I won't be providing clinical guidance on ABA therapy itself, I will be sharing insights on common administrative denials and the documentation challenges that impact the reimbursement. So my goal today is to help you understand how it can strengthen your documentation process to minimize claim denials, accelerate your reimbursement, and also ensure compliance with the payer expectation. So there's going to be an interactive Q&A. As I move along the presentation, feel free to send me questions. I will stop for a moment after a couple of slides. We can review them. I'll address the most relevant ones live. But if you have further questions, if it requires deeper research, then I would appreciate you privately share your name, your clinic name, and the state you are requesting this information from. So that will help me to provide you a tailored follow-ups after the session. And sharing your details is completely voluntary. All right, so let's dive in. Okay, so quick introduction. ABA documentation is more than a compliance requirement. It directly impacts the reimbursement and the financial stability of any clinic. Many providers view documentation as an administrative task, but it's totally wrong. Any inconsistent or any incomplete records can often lead to claim denials, payment delays, and revenue loss. Even smallest errors, it may be something that you're missing in the session notes, like name of the provider or vague progress notes, or discrepancies even in the start and end times that are not mentioned in your session note can trigger audits, recoupments, and will cause financial strain on practices. So I want you to think documentation like a foundation of a house. You can have the most beautiful design, but if the foundation isn't solid, everything you're going to build on top of it is going to become unstable. In ABA therapy, documentation is that foundation. It holds everything together from patient care to the reimbursement and making sure that nothing slips through the crack. So to prevent the revenue loss, it is definitely essential to meet the payer expectation. Talk about Medicare, TRICARE, and private insurances. They have specific documentation standards, and these are to be complied by all the clinics that are providing ABA services. Any failure to comply to these payer guidelines would be resulting in denied claims. But by aligning to this documentation with payer requirements, the providers can minimize the denials. It is also going to accelerate reimbursement and safeguard the cash flow. Ultimately, the strong documentation process and the practices not only support compliance, but it will also serve as a financial protection strategy for your ABA organization. All right, the most important piece, meet your payer expectation with confidence. All the ABA claims, predominantly in majority of the clinics that we are working, we are seeing that it is under high scrutiny with some of the payers like TRICARE, Medicaid, Anthem, sometimes with Optum. These are predominantly the payers where we are seeing a high scrutiny. So making accurate and detailed documentation is essential for a smooth reimbursement. One of the most critical requirements in ensuring the session notes is to align with the CPT codes. If there are going to be inconsistencies in the denials, this is going to lead to the audit. And it is very important that all the payer requirements, especially the start and the end time, should precisely be matched with the number of units that is being billed. As these discrepancies, if they are going to occur in the reported hours, then this will raise red flags, and this is going to lead to claim rejections and recoupments. So in this slide, I want to talk about some of the administrative guidelines of TRICARE. I want you guys to ensure that all the identifying details okay, here we go. I've just brought in a sample ABA session note. I want you all to make sure that you have the identifying details, the name of the member, what is the date of birth, what is the sponsor ID, the BCBA's name, the RBT's name. If the parents are present, mentioning the details about them are to be part of the session notes. The document should also have the exact start and the stop times to match with the bill units. TRICARE prefers to have a military format, so it is good if you're just going to put it in the same format. It's fine otherwise, just to keep it aligned with your claims, because they're going to see the claims in that military time format. So having that format in your session notes is the best. Again, these are something which you can have that added as a template in your software, and you have to build these templates, and it is essential to have all the necessary the administrative guidelines of the payer to be captured in your templates. It should be clear, and the template should also clearly indicate the supervisor presence, if was present, and the RBT's supervision details. Use a structured format to align the session notes with treatment goals. For parent training, document caregivers' engagement in the session. Provide clinical observation to justify an ongoing treatment and the medical necessity. The sample session note effectively supports the TRICARE claim submission, but should be supplemented with detailed intervention descriptions and the measurable progress in order to strengthen the compliance further, the tracking and also the compliance further. I want you to imagine the session notes like, imagine that you're trying to get a movie ticket. But if you're going to miss the key part of booking confirmation, no matter how much you explain, without that detail, you're not getting into the movie theater. Similarly, documentation is the key in getting your claims through the door. Without it, even the most necessary services will be denied. One critical example in failing to document is the parent engagement when you're using the CPT code 97156. Just like missing the confirmation number prevents your entry to the movie, missing the documentation of the caregiver participation can lead to high-risk denials, particularly with Medicaid and TRICARE claims. Payers expect a clear evidence that parent training has occurred, and without it, the claims are often rejected or denied. So by understanding and meeting these payer expectations is important for the providers to reduce the claim rejections, to accelerate the reimbursement, and also to strengthen the financial stability. I'm going to pause for a moment to see if there are any questions. If there are none, then I'm going to move on to the next slide. Derek, do we have any questions that I have to answer, or I can proceed with the next slide?
Not yet. I had a question about when you're building the templates, are these generally built within the practice management system, or are these templates that should be maintained in the practice management system and then elsewhere also, or
So
are you managing these?
I'm going to talk more about building these templates. That's going to be part of the next slide. You are already ahead. Preferably, these are the templates that can be built within your practice management system. How to build, what are the preferences that you need to choose, and, what are the basic necessities that you need to have in building a template to reduce the administrative costs related to training. All of those I'm going to explain in my next slide. Okay, since there are no questions, I'm going to move to the next slide. All right, here we go. So using an RCM-friendly templates ensures documentation is aligning to the payer requirements, reducing the errors, because this will lead to claim denials. Without a structured approach, missing details or inconsistencies can result in rejected claims and delayed payments. So what can we do? Standardize your templates. Providers will have to create a consistent session notes that improve claim approvals and prevent the revenue loss. I'm going to give you a real-time example of one of the clinics that we work with, which highlights this impact. So one of the clinic, which was based out of Florida, they struggled with 30% denial rate on a particular payer because their session note did not have some of the important requirements that are specified in the medical necessity guidelines of the payer. So this probably we have to make a change or edit the session note based on the payer guideline. And after adopting this structured template in their practice management system, their denials drop to 8% just in 3 months, leading to a faster reimbursement and an improved cash flow. So this demonstrates that small improvements in your documentation can definitely drive significant financial and operational benefits. So making a standardized template is a crucial tool to the ABA providers. So I have a pro tip here. Instead of training your staff on multiple payer-specific documentation standards, choose or identify a payer that has the highest level of medical necessity requirement. use that as your standard template. For example, if your clinic is going to participate with Blues and Cigna, TRICARE, compare which documentation requirements in your state has the highest standard. Now, TRICARE, of all these, to my understanding, TRICARE generally has a stricter session note requirements than the most commercial payers. So using TRICARE standard as your baseline ensures compliance across all payers. Again, this is specific to your clinic. You need to go through your contract, review the medical necessity requirements, see the ones that has the highest requirement and have one template and match that template to all the payers. So that reduces the training that you will have to give. It simplifies the staff training that you will have to provide and ensures that your documentation exceeds the requirements of all the other payers. And maintain the documentation requirement for the payer for which you have built this template. So this process of identifying which payer template that you will have to choose and that have the highest standard and having your staff trained on it is going to reduce the risk of denials, audits, while maintaining consistency across clinicians. And I hope I answered your question, Derek, there.
Yes, perfectly.
All right, thank you. Okay, protect against your revenue loss, catch small gaps before they cost you. Even some of the smallest documentation gaps can lead to significant revenue loss, denials, or audits, making it crucial to implement proactive measures. Common documentation errors include, it may be something like missing the session duration with the billed hours. This can definitely, raise red flags with payers, or duplicate sessions that are logged on the same day may also be flagged as a potential fraud, increasing the risk of an audit. And additionally, lack of measurable progress in the session notes will definitely lead to claim denials as payer require evidence of ongoing medical necessity. And another crucial critical issue is missing provider signatures. It is good to have both the RBT and the BCBA signature. If the parents are present, please have their signatures also. It is good to have all your session notes signed by the parent stating, yes, this session happened and they acknowledge that. So if these signatures are not going to be there for predominantly all payers, this will lead to an automatic claim denial. At least having the provider's signature is very important. So a pro tip here is that implementing a data-driven audit process is essential for ABA providers to enhance the documentation quality and also to minimize the revenue loss. This is one of the studies that I have seen in the Central Reach website. I have put the source document at the end of my slide where they say 80% of the session notes fail at least one payer requirement. So this underscores the critical need for thorough pre-billing audits. So what can we do here? A comprehensive initial audits. Again, this is going to sound alarming, but I have to tell you this because you need to create a baseline. So if you will have to create a comprehensive initial audit, begin by auditing 100% of your session notes. I repeat, begin by auditing 100% session notes to establish a baseline. It is very important to establish this baseline and identify some of the common documentation errors. This approach ensures that all potential issues are detected early, preventing claim denials and a revenue leakage. Then, gradual adjustment based on performance. So over time, analyze the audit findings to identify the trends, identify the individual clinician's performance. So for clinicians that demonstrate consistent accuracy, consider reducing the audit frequency or the audit percentage while maintaining or increasing the audit percentage for those that has higher error rates. And the impact of documentation errors. Common issues such as insufficient or missing documentation can lead to significant financial repercussion. It's not just denying claims or recoupment. it may also lead to cancellation or termination of your contract. So it is very, very important to have a pre-audit in place before the claim could go out of your practice management system. Proactive error identification. So regular audits is going to help in catching these errors like mismatched session notes, duplicate session, or lack of measurable progress, missing provider signature before the claims are submitted. So this is going to safeguard your clinic against any future revenue loss that might happen. And again, tailor training and support. Use this audit data to provide targeted feedback and training to your clinicians, focusing on the areas where these errors are more prevalent. So this personalized approach enhances the documentation practices and also reduces the future errors. So by adopting a structured, data-driven audit strategy will definitely help the ABA providers to strengthen their compliance, improve their documentation quality, and also to protect the financial health. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So the effective documentation in ABA is not merely a compliance obligation, but a strategic financial tool that safeguards and ensures your revenue streams are enhanced. So well-documented progress ensures continued authorization approvals. So it is not just a requirement, it is going to impact your authorization approvals as well. Payers require a clear evidence of patient progress to justify an ongoing treatment. So in your treatment plan, you will have to have evidence of the patient progress. Only then it is going to be easy for your authorization department to obtain that authorization for an ongoing treatment. A comprehensive and an accurate documentation of patient improvements is definitely essential for that authorization to be approved. I cannot emphasize more. Failure to provide this particular documentation will definitely lead to denied authorization. We have seen this in some of the clinics that we were working. So they have to go back and update the treatment plan, and then it needs to be submitted. So this put a pause in the services for the child. You all know, working in the ABA, the progress that they have made, it's going to be deteriorated if the services are not given consistently. So this not only affects impacts the continuity of the care and the revenue, but it may also have an impact on the patient outcome. So it is important that you have a well-documented progress to ensure a continued authorization approval. Then have a data-driven documentation that supports your payer rate increases. So as we have discussed earlier, a proper documentation is a financial tool. Now let's look into how it also supports your payer negotiation and increased rates. You all know that once in 3 years or every year, your contract is getting renewed. So leverage a deep data-driven records can substantiate the effectiveness of ADA interventions, providing a compelling case for negotiating high reimbursement rates with your payer. So by demonstrating a measurable outcome through meticulous documentation, it underscores the value of services rendered, facilitating discussions around some rate adjustments. So it is important to have this documentation as your base, as a financial tool to negotiate your prices. And again, standardization documents minimizes your payment delays and recoupments. We have already discussed this. Implementation of standardized documentation practices ensures consistency and completeness across all patient records. So this uniformity reduces the likelihood of errors that can cause payment delays or trigger recoupment actions by the payer. A consistent documentation approach streamlines your entire billing process, entire revenue cycle management process, leading to more timely reimbursements and also safeguard against the potential financial clawbacks that might occur in the future. So by viewing the documentation as a proactive revenue protection strategy is important for clinics. ABA providers can enhance their financial stability while maintaining the compliance and delivering high-quality patient care. I'm going to pause for a moment to see if you guys have any questions. Derek, let me know if there are any questions.
Oh, it looks good. So I kind of, it's a little bit off topic, but when we're talking about the documentation, this is all being kind of, everything is going into practice management all the time. But what's happening outside of the practice management system? So for our ABA owners that maybe haven't implemented practice management systems yet, how are they handling this kind of documentation?
So it's going to be pen and paper. I do see so if you talk about ABA, it's in a very nascent stage because it started as a very new specialty. So some of the clinics, probably I would say in 2017, 2018, I have seen some of the clinics that were using pen and paper to document the session notes. And I do know that there are some clinics which still does that. My recommendation is to go through a practice management system. Take any practice management system that fits your price, that fits your clinical documentation requirement, and go with it. But if you're not able to do it, then choose your session note format. Create like a note template and have that, you have copies of that given to your employees so they can mention all those requirements using pen and paper. Again, this is going to be a difficult task because they need to document, they need to maintain, everything needs to be written, starting from the sponsor detail, the member details, the start and end time, who was the clinicians that are present, who are the RBTs, like the session note example that I gave you, all of those information that are given as the administrative task, apart from the clinical requirements, will have to be handwritten by the clinicians. It's going to take some time in order to make the process more efficient and save the time of your clinicians rather than entering these administrative requirements, and to focus on patient care. It is ideal to have a practice management system. If not, have a standard template that has the highest medical necessity requirements and have them handfill it. So that's the only option that we have.
Thank you.
All right. So going to the next slide. Compliance failures and applied behavioral analysis can significantly impact the revenue cycle performance, especially as payer audits can be prevalent. Failure to meet this documentation standards can severely impact the revenue cycle performances. Medicaid mandates that the providers maintain the records for a minimum of 5 years. This is part of the False Claim Act. You need to keep the records for a minimum of 5 years for Medicaid, and CMS requires the records to be kept for up to 7 years. So non-compliance of this can lead to significant penalties. Even though they have made a payment this year, after 2 years or 3 years or up to 5 years, they have, or up to 7 years, sometimes depending on, the payer requirement or what is mentioned in your contract. If they come back and request for that medical records, it needs to be submitted. So non-compliance of this can lead to significant penalties. Sometimes it's really difficult to store all these records as hard copies if you do not use a practice management system. So I recommend to use the practice management system, at least for this requirement of maintaining the records for up to 5 years or up to 7 years. And post-payment audits are increasing due to this documentation inconsistencies, which means you have submitted the claim, say, for example, 2024, January, or let's say 2023, January, everything looks good. You receive the payment. In 2025, January, they can come back and ask for that record or the complete year record. I've seen when I had a clinic that was working in Washington, they used to request an year worth of records of that particular kiddo. So it's not just 1 month, one particular session note. Sometimes when they require that year-long information, you will have to submit that information. If it is not submitted, or if whatever the documentation you have submitted doesn't match with the billing claims that are submitted or with the hours submitted, it will cause recoupments. And it will also trigger further audits on the other kids that are participating with the payers, with that particular payer. And it may also lead to termination of your contracts. So it is very, very important that you have these records maintained. And let's talk about the prepayment reviews.
I wanted to just jump in here just for 1 second.
Sure, Derek.
One of the things that we deal with all the time from going from state to state are, the Medicaid will require a certain amount of record keeping, a certain number of years for retention. Louisiana is different from Pennsylvania, different from Florida, Oregon, all that, right? So what we recommend across the board and what we do with all of our clients is make sure that you have a data flow that's all going into one centralized location, and make sure that you have a backup of that location and just keep the backups forever. That way, no matter what gets deleted, keep everything forever all the time. And then you don't have to worry about regulations changing or contract compliance or any of that stuff. So just think that through in your business flows. Make sure you keep everything forever all the time, and then you don't have to worry about it.
That's a good tip. We always emphasize that in the clinics that we work as well, because having the backup is important. I mean, and predominantly all the practice management systems are cloud-based, so the data is always safe. It shouldn't be a problem. But remember, if you are moving from one EMR to another EMR, it is extremely important to have the records in that EMR separately loaded and saved. Just because you move to another EMR or a practice management system, that doesn't excuse you from providing this documentation. So when you are migrating from one practice management to another practice management, it is important that the provider safeguards that data and keep it available if the payer is going to request that information.
And keep and look in your terms and conditions. These practice management systems, they have right in their terms and conditions, if they lose all of your data, they are not responsible. So each of us with our own business are responsible to maintain all of our records and keep all of our data. And just like Aparna said, you are not excused if you had a data breach or if, whoever lost all of your data. So we've had some horror stories with that, with companies that just lose everything and say, sorry, we escalated to the engineers and, it's gone. And then you've got businesses that are running around with their hair on fire, trying to figure out how to fix it. But yeah, for sure. Definitely keep in your practice management system and then somewhere else and then back it up.
Yes, I'm totally with you on that. We have heard such horror stories. I have had a clinic which migrated from one practice management to another practice management system. They did not get that information. Luckily, the payer did not request any medical records up to 5 years, but they were on a tickling time bomb. It's really not a good practice to do that. You might have got saved once, but it's not going to be the case every time. So it's that practice management system. If you're going to close that, even if you can get printouts or hard copies of that records, keep them safe. It is you never know when they're going to request that information. So while we are discussing about this, I would also want to give a pro tip on understanding the modifier requirements across payers. Though we are talking about having a template in place, I would also recommend you to have a charge master in place. So when you are getting your fee schedule, add the appropriate modifiers based on the fee schedule, based on the provider type, based on their degree qualifications as per the requirement of the particular payer. The reason why I'm telling this is, it may be the same modifier, but different payers recognize it in different ways. What I'm talking about are the modifiers HO, HN, and HM. Though the modifiers are the same, when they are used in different payers, their definitions and applications can vary. I want you to pay attention to this because this is very, very important. When we did a due diligence for one particular clinic, which was based out of Texas, they had all the modifiers set up in a particular way. So when they had a new contract from Optum, they did not realize that Optum's modifier requirement or definition for the same modifier is different. And we really have to educate them. Luckily, we caught it before the first claim could go out. They were able to make the changes appropriately and the claims went seamlessly. But it is really important for you to understand what that modifier means or what that modifier definition is for your payer. Let me give you an example. So Optum's ABA program defines HO modifier as something that is to be given by the BCBAs. However, for the other payers, The HO modifier means somebody that has a master level degree, a clinician that is rendering ABA services with a master level degree. So if I have an RBP that has a master level degree, I can use HO modifier maybe for a bloom. However, if you are submitting a claim with an RBT that has a master level degree, then you should not be using a HO modifier because that is limited only to the BCBA. Again, let's talk about HN modifier, and like Nancy. So this modifier means anyone that is designated to have a bachelor level provider. But for Optum, it means this HN modifier is to be given only by the BCBAs. So if I have an RBT that has a bachelor level degree, and if I am submitting claims to Optum, I wouldn't be able to use a HN modifier. However, when I'm submitting claim to other payers that requires modifier like Blues, I can submit it with a HN modifier. So when you create your charge master, I recommend you to create based on the payers and tag to that provider with the right modifier. And that's the right way of doing it instead of having one modifier common for all the payers. Now, let me give you another example. If it is a HM modifier, this is the modifier that is to be used by the registered behavior technician. However, a HM modifier is typically used for someone that has less than bachelor degree for predominantly all the Blues. So you need to know if that particular modifier means the clinician level or it relates to their degree qualification. Accordingly, you need to assign the modifiers and align it to the fee schedule of that particular payer. So the best practice is that since modifier definitions can differ among payers, it is very, very important to verify each payer-specific requirements. If your practice works with multiple insurance company, standardize the documents based on what that particular payer guidelines on that modifier means instead of having one modifier across. So this way, your billing, when you are billing the services that is being rendered, it is going to align to that particular payer policy for that modifier. And this is going to reduce your claim denial and administrative tasks. Again, they may pay initially, but then when they require that information to be submitted, and if they find there is a mismatch in the modifier that is being submitted, it will lead to recoupments or clawbacks. We do not want this to happen. And, sometimes if they see that there is an error in one or two claims that are submitted, they may require the claims or, the session notes for all of the members that are working in your clinic. And that might not just lead to post-payment audits. They may put the pause in a pre-payment audit as well, which means you will keep submitting claims, they will keep requesting medical records. It goes through a complete scrutiny. Sometimes clinics take up to 6 months to come out of these audits. So it is always better to be proactive instead of being reactive and have these modifiers set up correctly when you are creating your fee schedules. And I hope it's clear on how you need to set up or why it is important for you to know what each modifier means for your specific payer. I'm going to pause for a minute to see if there are any questions before I could move to the next slide. Derek, you can tell me if there are any questions.
Looking good so far.
All right, amazing. Okay, now the most important piece. Integrating advanced technology into ABA practices can significantly reduce the documentation errors and also enhance the reimbursement process. So the EHR system with ABA-specific compliance features, if you have an EHR system or a practice management system that has an option where, you can implement some tailored documentation standards that will align based on your payer requirements, then you should go for it. Or an AI-based documentation assistance for real-time error checks. If you have that option in your practice management system, there is nothing wrong in exploring that option. So utilizing an AI-powered documentation it also assists in enabling the real-time identification and correction errors during the documentation process. So by proactively addressing the potential issues, the AI assets help maintain the high documentation standards, so thereby increasing the likelihood of successful reimbursements. If that is an option available in your practice management system, it is worth exploring. Or if you have an option of automated time tracking to prevent any duration discrepancies, I would recommend you to try that option as well. So an automated time tracking system that accurately records the time duration, the session duration, and have that session added automatically to the session notes. If you have that option, I would recommend you to take that option so that, manual intervention can be avoided. Ensuring the consistency between the documented service times and the billed hours. In order to do that, if there is an automated time tracking available, I would recommend you to use that. So this precision prevents the common discrepancies that often lead to the claim denials or audits based on time tracking or based on time that is mentioned in the session notes and the claims that are billed out. So we are almost in the last slide. So these are your rules and the key takeaways. Rule number 1, if it's not documented, it did not happen. Why? Payers and auditors require complete documentation. If a service isn't properly recorded or documented, it cannot be billed or defended in an audit because this is going to lead to denials or recoupments. If there is a session that is being rendered, and if there is no session notes added to that service, my humble request is not to bill that claims out. So that is an easiest way to have an audit in place. No session notes, it cannot be billed out. If you have a session note, have a checklist built and make sure that it has the highest documentation requirement. You don't need to have a checklist for each payer. You can choose or prepare a checklist based on the payer that has the highest medical necessity or documentation requirements and prepare the checklist and make sure that all of these are available in the session notes, because that is the only thing that is going to stop from denials or recoupments from happening. So if it is not documented, it did not happen. So what is the rule number 2? Follow the payer rules, even if they don't make sense. Think of the example of the modifier. The CPT guidelines, the HCPCS guidelines, explains that HM, HO, HN is based on the educational qualification. However, for Optum, it is based on the clinician's levels. So insurance company, each of them have their unique requirements for ABA claims. So failing to comply, even if it is frustrating or if the rules are illogical, this is not going to help the situation. It might lead to denials and delays in payments. So follow the payer rules. What is the rule number 3? The best audit defense is a good offense. Why? Post-payments audits are increasing. So proactive documentation reviews, the internal audit, the payer-specific templates, these are all the important tools that should be there in your toolkit to avoid the penalties before they could happen. Quality and accuracy should be our new superpower. This is what I tell all my clients that we are working. We are there in almost 40 different states. We are serving some of the top 10 ABA payers. And this is what we tell them. As long as your clinic is going to be ethical, we can make you sustainable and profitable. So the quality and accuracy is in your session notes is going to be the new superpower for all your clinics. All right, what is the rule number 4? Payers look for reasons not to pay you. Why? Insurance company often deny claims over very minor errors. It can be as simple as the parent signature is not there. You do not have the BCBA signed, or it can be as simple as the session notes is not in a specific format, or it can be as simple as the time is not mentioned. So if you want to prevent revenue loss due to this, make sure that you have all of the medical necessity requirement of the payer part of your session notes. Rule number 5, one template to rule them all. Why? Instead of training your staff on different documentation formats for each payer, as this increases the cost of training, use one gold standard template that meets all the payer requirements. So ABA documentation is more than a compliance. It's a financial protection strategy for your clinic. So by improving the documentation practices, the auditing all the documentation proactively, and by leveraging technology, providers can maximize the revenue and can keep the contract intact, negotiate better, and avoid costly errors. So these are all the rules that you will have to keep in mind. Just these 5 rules. And if you follow this, you're not going to have documentation errors that leads to denials or clawbacks. That's all I have for today. I can take any questions if you guys have. And I will also try and share some of these as a PDF, and I will forward it to Josh and Derek. They can send it to all you guys. And good luck with your documentation requirements that the payer requests. Please remember, all these are standard requirements for your payer. And if you don't provide them, it will lead to claim denials, revenue leakages, or clawbacks in future. Thank you.
Aparna, I really think the awesome prezzo. Rule number 1, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. Rule number 2, follow the payer's rules, even if they don't make sense. Because of rule number 4, payers look for reasons not to pay you. Like, that's the whole thing, right? And then the best audit defense is a good defense. Always be ready for an audit. Always be proactively preparing yourself for an audit. You want to build your systems, and that's why we push your governance, risk, and compliance. You have a program where you're always managing this stuff. You're governing your business. You're managing your risk of an audit or of a hurricane. You want to manage your risk of everything, and then your compliance will fall into line with those things. But and one template to rule them all. I love that. If you have to do something for somebody, just do that one thing for everybody, and then you don't have to remember who you have to do it for and who you don't have to do it for. Just make it simple, right? But I love it. Once again, great info. So thank you, Aparna.
Thank you so much, everyone. We want you to be successful, because if you see the statistics for one BCBA, there are 76 kids that are aligned to. So we have less number of BCBAs and more number of kids that is requiring services. There is a wait list for in some of the areas in order for the kid to take ABA services. So it is important that we have a strong clinic, not just in rendering services, but also in their clinical documentation for their success. Remember, if you're ethical, the billing companies like us will be able to make you sustainable and profitable. Good luck with your documentation process, and be successful, because the kids need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Aparna. Love you, everybody. We'll see you on the group.